when it comes to the hard problem of consciousness, it's like, hey, look, how do we get phenomenal facts from physical facts, or qualia from physical things? How it seems weird. It seems crazy. There's an explanatory gap. Um,
Yeah.
so I go in for substance dualism for a lot of the same reasons that Goff goes in for panpsychism. It's like, yeah, I know
Mhm.
it's weird. I know it sounds unscientific, and there's the common or interaction problem, sure, but at least I don't have the hard problem, right? I'm
Mhm.
wondering if the hard problem, if you can just sidestep it with a like information theoretic explanation and say like you don't get consciousness from physical things because you have this third thing, this neutral monist view.
Mhm.
So one question is just that is that the move, and then two, like, does the hard problem just follow over into the neutral monist view and say, well, okay, well, how do you get consciousness from information then?
Yeah. So, yeah, so it's a great question. It's kind of how my dissertation started, actually, my PhD
Sweet.
dissertation. I gave what I called the hard problem of information. So I was like, okay, let's take integrated information theory. Let's see how the hard problem matches up to it. And basically like, look, if we take a strong stance on the nature of information as like this distinct ontological or metaphysical category, right? Having existence on its own, separate from the physical, well, then we actually just get a new hard problem,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I tried to pull from Chalmers' own work, right? In Conscious Mind in his 96 book, right? He ends with a kind of speculative chapter. And I've never griped at him about this, but I always want to. He's never followed on that, and I kind of feel a little let down. I hope if he watches this, I want more information stuff, right?
Yeah.
His new books kind of touches on it a little bit, but I wanted more, right? But this idea of like, there's this dual aspect notion of information. Maybe this is connected up to how, physical reality and the phenomenal interact. But ultimately, I think you get a new problem, right? You get this hard problem of information, which is just why is it the case that phenomenal experience or properties are entailed by information theoretic reality, right? Well,
Yeah.
you get the same thing just in information terms. The thing is, I think it leaves enough wiggle room. And this was another essay that I published from the dissertation on, you have the hard problem of consciousness, right? Which is this
Mhm.
question of, well, what is the entailment of physical experience, or sorry, phenomenal experience and properties from the physical, right? This is entailment question.
Yeah.
Behind the hard problem, though, is you have what might be called the master argument, right? So Stoljar calls it. The master argument is the structure and dynamics argument, right? And that's a comment about what it is that the physical is composed of, right? And that's when Chalmers talks about things like structure and function or structure and dynamics, right?
Yeah.
And so it's the type of explanations that physical explanation give. Those are what's lacking that we don't get the entailment from. And so what I do is I kind of ask, well, does Chalmers actually give an exhaustive definition of structure and dynamics? If structure and dynamics is what composes what the physical is telling us, right? Is that an exhaustive definition? And pulling from a few different areas, particularly some work done by Kolchinsky and Wolpert, Santa Fe Institute in
Okay.
complexity science. They were doing work on, sorry, not, some nonlinear dynamics in terms of like how do we get semantics from the syntax of nature, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
where does meaning and value come from? How do you give a physical explanation of that, right? And they were doing some stuff on non-equilibrium and thermodynamics to try to explain how we extract meaning by the difference between our, the way that the syntax of nature is between that and our expectations of it, how we go out and I think of like food seeking behavior, like, right, how we get meaning from reality.
Yeah.
So I took that and then I took some of the stuff from IT, which had this idea of, again, still this kind of idea of like, is there something kind of qualitatively different about the structure and dynamics of sort of uh, naturally occurring complex systems, which aren't captured in Chalmers' characterization of it? And I
Yeah.
kind of come to a similar conclusion to people that get IT is that there's a kind of difference between extrinsic and intrinsic structure and dynamics. You might think extrinsic structure and dynamics or structure and functions are the things that are readily observable from the outside, right? Third
Okay.
person observable.
Yeah.
So you might think if you have a kind of billiard ball view about how physical things interact with each other, right?
Yeah.
It's all the stuff that bumps into each other that we can look at, right?
Mhm.
But then if you think about the kind of intrinsic structure and dynamics that might be going on, maybe if you think about the kind of self-organization of like a locust swarm, is that captured by Chalmers' notion of structure and function or structure and dynamics? But you might think of even more complex than that, right? You might think
Mm.
of the integrated information, say that IT posits in the posterior cortex, right? These sort of intrinsic structure and dynamical properties that only arise with a very particular satisfaction of, say, those axioms and the postulates given by IT. That kind of intrinsic structure and dynamics it's not clear to me that that's actually captured in this notion of
Mm,
structure and function that Chalmers gives.
yeah.
And I think what that does is opens up enough of a door, right? Just cracks the door open. Like, well, there could be a class of structural and dynamical properties, very specific ones, that might be able to get us around the hard problem, right?
Okay.
And they say the only explanation that's kind of amenable to that is this sort of information theoretic, kind of ontic structuralist explanation. Um, Particularly if we take a much more hardline position on, say, the metaphysics and ontology of information, which again just sounds kind of wild, right? But like you said, if it does better work,
Right.
I don't know how to take it, right?
It's
Like,
all wild. Yeah.
it's all wild. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
the moment you speculate about the ultimate nature of reality, like, I don't know, you're off the races.
Right.
There's no hold back. Like,
Right.
you guys just go
Yeah.
for it.
I love that, man. Hey guys, thanks for watching that clip from the Parker's Pensées podcast. If you enjoyed it, leave me a like and drop a thinking emoji in the comments or let me know what you thought. If you did enjoy it, if you learned something, you're going to love the full conversation over on my main channel, Parker's Pensées.